May Day has historically been the day where workers commemorate the historical struggles and sacrifices made before them to attain workers' rights and freedoms. On the 1st of May every year, workers across Europe would demonstrate to celebrate the occasion. In 1929, in the Weimar Republic, the communists protested on May Day in defiance of a ban by the Social Democratic government in Berlin. The Berlin police responded with violence and brutality, opening fire on the protesters, killing and wounding hundreds in what would become Bloody May. This video chronicles the background leading to the demonstration itself, and its aftermath. The foundation of the Weimar Republic was not peaceful by any means. Political violence was rife in the early years, and economic troubles followed shortly after. The Social Democratic Party, or SPD, wrestled control over the new Democratic Republic from various political forces vying for control, including the far left and far right. To do so, the SPD enlisted the help of the Freikorps, who were right-wing paramilitaries, and used them to crush left-wing insurrections. The Freikorps' brutality and extrajudicial executions of communist and socialist leaders, most famously Karl Liebknecht and Rosa Luxemburg, created a long-lasting hatred of the Social Democrats by the newly formed Communist Party and its adherents. Despite this, relations between the parties were not totally shot. Though not on the friendliest of terms, the two parties had cooperated on an electoral level on the expropriation of dynastic properties of the former ruling houses in a 1926 referendum. The SPD had, however, held power in Germany since the revolution, and was seen as the new establishment. Theoreticians of the Communist International developed the idea of social fascism, which was the belief that social democrats would betray the revolution and the proletariat. This theory governed the KPD's treatment of the SPD and the Nazis, where while the KPD were committed to combating Hitler and his brown shirts in the streets, they were to focus primarily on the struggle against the Social Democrats. Although competent theoreticians like Nikolai Bukharin even stressed the folly of such a theory, the long-standing animosity between the KPD and SPD had meant that social fascism found an audience in a country where the communists had material reasons to distrust the Social Democrats. The Social Democratic governance of Prussia, led by Otto Braun and Interior Minister Albert Grzinski, were both outspoken in their anti-communism. Clashes in 1928 between the communists and Berlin police had seen many killed and more wounded. The police, many of whom were veterans of World War I or had received military training, were known for their brutality. In this atmosphere, Berlin Police Chief Karl Friedrich Zorgebel had instituted a ban on public demonstrations on the 13th of December 1928. This ban was extended through all of Prussia in March 1929. The irony of the Social Democrats banning open demonstrations on May Day from a supposedly working-class party was lost on no one, including many in the SPD themselves. At a national level, SPD figures had even condemned the Prussian ministry for the ban. The communists had no intention of respecting the ban, and intended on demonstrating peacefully anyway. Although there was some anxiety and lack of confidence in the success of organizing enough people for the demonstration, pressure from Berlin locals outweighed any initial doubts. Though the communists were no strangers to using violence, they were committed to peaceful protest on May Day, with some hoping that the demonstration would lead to a repeal of the ban. The KPD even informed the police of the parade routes and intended rally spots. Thus, as May Day approached, the communists called on their supporters to take to the streets to demonstrate. Celebrations on May 1st were different to prior years. SPD demonstrators celebrated in closed halls while the communists held their open-air gatherings as planned. The communists had planned for peace, but were no strangers to violence. However, the scale of the police response was something no one anticipated. Demonstrators were confronted with specially drafted riot police, who used baton charges and pistol shots to break up the protesters. According to eyewitnesses, as more KPD supporters trickled out of various sites towards the end of the day, the police responded by swinging their batons at everyone within reach. Running battles developed between crowds of demonstrators and the police, and many found themselves being brutalized by the police simply for being on the wrong side of a police line. In the communist stronghold of the Wedding district, the police had resorted to firearms. One of the first victims, 52-year-old plumber Max Gemeinhardt, was shot in his apartment window after yelling at the police and bled out on the floor. Gemeinhardt was not a communist, but in fact a member of the SPD. The police utilized machine guns and armored cars, and the demonstrators attempted to erect barricades to halt them. There were numerous instances of police not just firing on demonstrators, but also civilian onlookers. Fighting continued on May 2nd, where the KPD called for a general strike in response to the violence, which was met with limited success. The Prussian government banned the communist newspaper Die Rote Fahne that day. Members of the RFB, the Red Front Fighters League, which was the paramilitary wing of the KPD, hitherto remaining underground to avoid their organization's outright banning, now joined in the clashes. Local RFB members appealed to the party leadership for weapons to fight back against the police, but the party was reluctant and refused, creating anger and bitterness. Police had enacted martial law in the districts of Wedding and Neukölln, and by the afternoon of May 3rd, the fighting had stopped. The events of Bloody May had ended by the 4th, with 33 civilians killed, approximately 200 wounded, and over 1,200 more arrested by the police. The police accused the KPD of firing the first shots, and had asserted that the communists were using the demonstration as a pretext for a full-blown insurrection. Following the cessation of hostilities, the police continued their arrests, and Brzezinski had outlawed the RFB in all of Prussia. The ban then extended nationwide on May 15th. Of the first 25 people killed, 2 were SPD members and 17 were civilians of no party, with none belonging to the KPD. One of the victims, Charles Mackay, was a New Zealand ex-politician and was working as a part-time correspondent for the Sunday Express when he was killed by the police. The police desperately tried to find evidence of communist weapon stashes to prove their accusations and justify their brutality, but were unable to find any such stashes, only managing to scrounge together some old World War I souvenirs that hadn't been fired during the hostilities. One police report stated the following, quote, "A message arrived that armed communists were supposed to be waiting in the pub in Weddingstrasse 9. The building was searched and a pistol was found, out of which no shots had been fired, together with some pamphlets." In a later press conference, the police wheeled out a police officer who they claimed was shot by the communists during the demonstrations, but in reality had shot himself in the foot by accident several days before. Ideologically, the actions of the SPD and the Berlin police had only legitimized the communist theory of social fascism, and drove an irreparable rift between the two parties that would last till the Nazis rose to power. Per Stalin's rhetoric, the KPD's biggest enemy was the SPD, followed by the fascists, and no possibility of a united front was to occur. Berlin's May Day celebrations in 1929 saw horrific political violence between the local police and communist demonstrators. Although tensions between the SPD and KPD were high, the parties still somewhat got along, but the SPD's response to a peaceful demonstration in violation of police orders forged a permanent rift between the two parties. The failure of the two parties to reconcile and form a united front would be one of the major reasons why the Nazis rose to power with ineffective opposition, and would see both the Communists and Social Democrats end up in the same Nazi concentration camps from 1933 onwards. Thanks for watching.